Macron's prisoner? Who ordered Durov's arrest, and why are media moguls so alarmed about it? After what happened to Durov, I strongly advise Elon Musk not to come to Europe. Soros is buying radio stations.
The American elections promised to be extremely heated. The last such division was on the eve of the Civil War in 1850. Attack on Kursk. Who pushed Zelensky to take a desperate step, and how long will the intense exchange of blows last? Our readiness for negotiations should not have raised any doubts. Although, of course, after the adventure in the Kursk region, any talks on this matter become irrelevant. Auctioning icons from the pre-canonical church in Ukraine has become a profitable business for the Kiev regime.
The slightest shift in emphasis leads to serious consequences in religious and spiritual life, so you can't joke about such things. A right turn, a humiliated Germany on the verge of a new Führer. Trends of the New World Order, events that make you keep your finger on the pulse. What should each of us pay attention to? Let's figure it out together. The plane that couldn't. Durov's private jet was symbolically grounded in France, with a series of accusations against the passenger, among which only cannibalism and the destruction of the Third French Republic were missing due to the criminal negligence of the host side. The absurdity of what is happening has sparked a wave of creative public support. Macron, if Durov isn't free today, that's 2 croissants dead. Free Durov! Freedom for Pavel Durov. Children growing up without a father will be on your conscience. Daddy, my love, I'm waiting for you. Daddy, son? It's your mom. This is for you. Pasha, we're sending you a package. Here's some soap. Just don't drop it in the bathhouse. Greetings to the cell, Pasha! And so, it seems you're a trendy libertarian, a non-meat eater, and a cosmopolitan, a desirable guest and conversationalist at any party, even at the highest level. This is to say that malicious tongues are talking about Macron inviting Durov to spend an evening over a friendly dinner. How can you refuse the leader of one of the greatest countries of the free world, especially if you are a happy holder of a French passport? It's hard to imagine that with such introductions you would end up in the dungeons of democracy. Too many questions arise on their own. Obviously one of them is, who's next? The founder of the video hosting Rumble, Chris Pavlovsky. He didn't wait for the gendarmes and left Europe. Here's what he wrote on his X page. I'm a bit late with this, but for a good reason I just safely left Europe. France threatened Rumble, and now they've crossed the red line by arresting Telegram CEO Pavel Durov, reportedly for not censoring statements. Rumble will not tolerate such behavior and will use all available laws and means to fight for freedom of expression, a universal human right. We are currently fighting in French courts and hope for the immediate release of Pavel Durov. Representatives of the new technological order and all sorts of techies are seriously concerned about their future. It should be noted that this is absolutely justified. The trend of taking control of mass communication tools is evident. It's understandable. The Euro-Atlantic space is not a place for the rampant pluralism of opinions, especially in an era of large-scale ideological and semantic confrontation. By the way, back in February of this year, Estonian tigress Kaja Kallas called on the European Commission to tighten control over Telegram. It would be extremely funny if it turned out that Durov was arrested right under Kallas's nose. But we understand, of course, that the bird flies too low for such games, although the role of the scapegoat is quite suitable. In general, it seems that the beacon of technological progress can easily repeat the success story of Pavel Durov. After buying Twitter and rebranding it to X, he unleashed a total rampage of Trumpism there, which, as you understand, is simply unacceptable. And suddenly it turned out that X is connected with Russian oligarchs. Allegedly, they helped Musk buy the social network in 2022. The notorious Russian trace, of course, connects Musk and Durov, but the main focus is still on implementing the necessary information policy. That is why the media face of Telegram is now held hostage by Macron. They need either to include their people in the company's management, or to get the encryption keys. There will definitely be problems with the latter. Pavel Durov knows nothing about them and openly says so. I thought it would be really nice to come up with a very good messenger. An encrypted messenger, and my brother, being the genius that he is, was able to create the encryption standard that we still use today, with minor changes. Your brother invented encryption? Yes. My brother, he's incredibly smart. He could, he's an expert in encryption. He developed the basic principles of Telegram encryption. I was more responsible for the user interface, how the app works, and the main features. It turns out that Pavel Durov is not the main target in the operation to seize control of Telegram today. He acts as a hostage and a subject for negotiations. It feels like Durov suspected his prospects, and the chairs from the art object, which everyone discussed so actively after the interview with Tucker, became prophetic. Human trafficking and corporate raids, a new twist in the development of Euro-Atlantic values. Dynamic music. Genius, billionaire, playboy, philanthropist. To understand who we're talking about, just hear this phrase. Especially in the last couple of weeks. And now it's not about Iron Man Tony Stark, but about Pavel Durov, whose arrest is now being talked about by everyone except the lazy. The world's media have literally staged a competition for the right to be called the record holder for the amount of dirt poured on the founder of Telegram. At the same time, many of them are trying to present this arrest as Macron's personal achievement, but he is not happy with such popularity. It's not true that I made him several invitations. This is a complete lie. I was not supposed to have meetings with Mr. Durov either at the end of last week or in the following days. I didn't know he was coming to France, and these are independent actions of the French judiciary in this matter. Others approach the situation with humor. Handy internet users have already presented their version of the businessman being behind bars. We are ready to destroy the dossier. Give you a chance. We need only one thing from you, Mr. Durov. Hand over the keys to Telegram.
Tempting offer. But I have a better idea. Let's say I send you far away.
However, it is not exactly known what Durov said, but the fact remains. The entrepreneur, who is accused of 6 charges, is now released on bail of 5 million euros with a number of restrictions. The founder of Telegram has surrendered all his passports and must reside at an address set by the judge. He is prohibited from leaving France, and the businessman is required to visit the police station twice a week. In such a regime of restriction of freedom, the suspect can live for many months, if not years. The end of the investigation, which in France is conducted very slowly. In France, he is accused of child pornography and other nonsense. What did he do? If you want the person responsible for Telegram to have trouble because of its misuse, then I think we need to arrest the CEO of Toyota because they are used by ISIS. Of course, no one will accuse Toyota, and in general, they say that Durov did go for cooperation. According to Liberation, the businessman previously cooperated with French counterintelligence, which helped prevent a number of terrorist attacks. Moreover, after the arrest, he allegedly expressed his willingness to cooperate and handed over his phone to the police with the access code. If so, then the last of the Mohicans of free speech risks being Elon Musk, although according to rumors, activists are also after him. After what happened to Durov, I strongly advise Elon Musk not to come to Europe. Even for the planned meeting with me in September in Dublin. Don't come, Elon! I asked you, but don't come. We can't be sure that you won't meet the same fate. They arrest journalists too. As for Durov himself, it seems he's not doing too badly. Recently, he was seen with his companion on the streets of Paris. By the way, Yulia Vavilova has also become the focus of media attention. She is credited with the role of a Mossad agent. Allegedly, she exposed the founder of Telegram with her social media posts. As noted by the Daily Mail, streamer Shay Crypto Coach posted photos from places where the founder of Telegram also appeared. And it was these images that helped the police learn about Durov's movements. Conspiracy theorists believe that Vavilova works for Israeli intelligence, and decided to lure the businessman into the hands of Western intelligence services. Among all these speculations and fakes, it is extremely difficult to understand where the truth is and where the lie is. But one thing is certain for now. Durov's adventure in Paris has made Telegram one of the most popular and downloaded apps in the world. At this rate, representatives of the new technological order will form their own industry union to protect oppressed IT specialists and media moguls. So to speak, trouble unites even business competitors. Partly, consolidation is already visible in public statements. It's not just about the escape of the founder of the video hosting Rumble from the Blooming Garden. The main focus is on the pressure that social network owners are subjected to by the ruling elites of the collective West. Media mogul Mark Zuckerberg admitted that the White House forced him to censor Americans. In an open letter, the head of Meta stated that the Joe Biden administration pressured him to censor content. The current electoral campaign in the US is also being prepared at a rapid pace. George Soros' foundation is buying shares in more than 200 American radio stations for $400 million. The divisions and confrontations among US billionaires are projected onto the entire American society. During another communication session with Space, Joe Biden let slip that the Democrats are not ready to peacefully hand over power if they lose. Are you sure there will be a peaceful transfer of power on January 20th, 2025? If Trump wins, no, I'm not sure at all. I mean, if he loses, I'm not sure at all. We don't take him seriously. All these words about if we lose, there will be a bloodbath. Look at what they are trying to do now in local electoral districts, where people are counting votes. We witnessed the dirtiest electoral campaign during the last American elections. This is exactly the case when in the US it no longer matters who wins the elections. The question is rather who will be declared the winner. Let's discuss what's happening with political scientist Steve Samarin from the USA. Hello, Steve. I would like to discuss the situation in the United States because, one way or another, the election results affect not only what's happening in the United States, but I think also the entire international situation. In your opinion, how divided is American society today along party lines and views on the future of the United States?
Well, perhaps for the first time in 200 years, we can see such a division. The last such division was on the eve of the Civil War in 1850, when there were serious disagreements about, firstly, slavery, of course, but secondly, about the powers that individual states have. At that time, the division was so great that it led to the Civil War. And now something similar, although of course we will no longer see a civil war like it was. That is, people will not be riding horses with Confederate flags, but they will take up rifles or something. I think it won't come to rifles because the Civil War is already ongoing. It is progressing, but unfortunately shots are being heard as we see. And these shots are aimed at the president and presidential candidates of the United States. It's a dangerous situation. Society is, of course, very angry and divided. Such a division hasn't been seen in a long time. But the upcoming elections are another battle in this civil war. And it won't stop the civil war. That is, the elections will pass, someone will become president, and the other side will not calm down. Again, I don't think it will come to rifles or direct clashes between the now warring sides. But of course the battles will continue in the media field and probably in the economic sphere and everywhere else.
Steve, but still, we see that they have started to work interestingly on this agenda you mentioned. A film about the Civil War has been released in the media sphere with quite harsh scenes showing the consequences of this civil confrontation in the United States. What is the purpose of releasing such media? Is it purely a commercial story or an attempt to influence the minds and consciousness of Americans?
It's certainly not just a commercial project. Mainly, this project aims to show people that there are no winners in a civil war. So, it's an attempt to pull the population back. It's an attempt, yes, to cool down some hotheads. And this attempt is quite successful, although again, people are very angry. And these opposing sides just hate each other. Why are they angry? Different views on the future of the states. Mainly, different views on some fundamental things. Well, firstly, values that America has always promoted, such as family values, traditional values, are now subject to doubt and change. So in particular, LGBT, this is one of the reasons the popularization of LGBT, conservatives do not accept it, while liberals, on the contrary, try to promote it. On this agenda, you can score a lot of points. And other things that divide society, for example, aid to Ukraine. Republicans do not support this aid, while Democrats say it needs to be continued and increased. But this is people's money, money that comes from taxpayers' pockets. Considering that our food prices have risen by more than 100% over a certain period, considering that the American dream has now turned into just a vapor, and buying a house, as it was before, taking a mortgage, buying a house, paying it off calmly, investing the remaining money somewhere, this is no longer even talked about. If in the course of things a family McDonald's becomes a luxury, all this divides society very seriously.
How do you assess, well, you have already touched on this topic, the results of Biden's presidency?
I agree with Donald Trump that he is the worst president. Firstly, look, our budget deficit is 1.7 trillion. This is absolutely astronomical, although, of course, previous presidents, well, before Clinton, after Clinton, they also contributed, but still, 1.7 trillion is a fantastic figure. Well, it's impossible to deal with this deficit.
We partly see the results. Black Monday, when the stock markets crashed, everything turned red. Trillions of dollars were lost by stockholders. Many began to recall the thesis of Bidenomics, which was actively promoted. Is this it? Is this the result of Bidenomics?
Well, this is certainly the result. Such an absolutely unbalanced policy when much more is spent than earned than collected in taxes. Again, the U.S. external debt under Biden reached a record 32 trillion. How much do we owe? We are unable to repay it under any conditions. Neither we, nor our children, nor our grandchildren. Those who watch our broadcasts closely have repeatedly seen that we focus on processes that others avoid. Just a few weeks ago, most analysts were racing to guess the end date of the conflict. And only in our trends did we predict that all these talks were just a cover operation. Let's watch a fragment from the August 7th broadcast. Most Ukrainians surveyed, 57% supported starting negotiations with Russia. 38% of respondents were against it. Ukrainian political scientists note that similar public opinion figures were in the first months after the conflict began. I remind you, at that time, the then Prime Minister of the UK, Boris Johnson, called Kyiv and forbade negotiating with Russia. To disrupt the dialogue, UKA was organized, and in this regard a logical question arises. How far will the new wave of peace rhetoric go, and will there be another call? This time, such a call was the invasion of the Kursk region.
All of Zelensky's and other representatives of the Kiev regime's talks about the need for dialogue about peace with Russia were trampled once again. As we predicted, no one was preparing any referendum. Moreover, the attack on the Kursk region buried the dialogue between Kiev and Moscow about stopping strikes on energy infrastructure. This dialogue could have been the first step towards a complete cessation of hostilities. And here it is worth considering who was behind the Kursk operation. The US has already practically achieved its goals in the region. The EU has been stripped to the bone. German industry is collapsing like a domino chain. They can wrap up and count the profits, and it would be good to declare themselves the winner over Russia before the presidential elections and keep power for the Democratic Party for another term. In my opinion, the decision on Kursk, like on Bucha, was once again made in London. The US and the UK have a clear division of spheres of influence. The Americans are moving to ignite the Indo-Pacific region, while the British remained to oversee and squeeze the last juices out of the EU. The invasion of the Kursk region completely changed the international attitude towards the conflict. For a long time, official Kyiv played to the public from the position of a victim and carefully guarded its status. All raids by sabotage groups into Russian regions were carried out under the cover of collaborators from the Russian Volunteer Corps. In the mono broadcast, they talked about brave guys with Russian passports who want to change the power in the Kremlin. Official Kyiv denied its involvement and presented the events as a civil conflict. Such raids show that it is possible to make incursions into the Russian Federation, to tickle them, and very unpleasantly for the Russians themselves. Full-scale invasion of Ukraine into the Kursk region and occupation of settlements nullifies for official Kyiv the status of a victim and makes it an equal participant in the conflict in the eyes of the collective South. The Kursk operation by Zelensky finally shifted the focus. There is hardly any chance today for rapprochement between Russia and Ukraine. The possibility of dialogue about peace conferences and referendums in the short term is buried under the rubble of civil infrastructure in the Kursk region.
It should not have caused any doubts, although, of course, after the adventure in the Kursk region, any talks on this matter become irrelevant.
The invasion of the Kursk region, driven by the need to quell growing talks about peace with Russia, forced official Kyiv to withdraw the most prepared troops from various directions. This practically exposed the front and affected the successes of the Russian military. In the Donetsk direction, pockets are forming, and circumstances are developing in which several units of the Ukrainian armed forces may find themselves encircled. What is happening raises logical questions from society and journalists. There are no significant successes in advancing in the Kursk direction, while the forces of the Ukrainian armed forces, in need of reinforcements near Pokrovsk, are left to their fate. Such questions make Zelensky noticeably nervous, and he struggles to contain his emotions. And before the Kursk operation, was there progress towards Pokrovsk?
There was, yes.
Faster or higher?
More or less at the same pace, as I understand, from open examples.
I think faster. Every day brings a political failure and economic collapse. Zelensky is no longer ready to take responsibility and defend his team. His rating and level of support simply do not allow it. He has to share the burden with those around him. Within a day, almost a dozen top officials were dismissed without explanation. The invasion of the Kursk region has effectively trapped Zelensky in a vice of harsh circumstances. At the same time, a promising diplomat launched a pre-election campaign in London. Zelensky's assistant released a book, The Iron General. It not only talks about the wisdom and humanity of the main character, elevating his greatness to the skies, but also covers the conflict between Zelensky and Zelensky. The British Crown is shuffling its deck. What is happening today in Ukraine is difficult to describe using diplomatic terms. The true nature of people in power is reflected in their blatant duplicity. One recalls Poroshenko in a cassock, Zelensky bowing to the head of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church. When they needed the support of believers in the elections, they were not bothered by the MP suffix. Today, for the sake of political expediency, they ban the canonical church and persecute believers. Credit where it's due. Not all deputies of the Verkhovna Rada have sold their souls and participate in blatant obscurantism. Reasonable voices are heard from the parliamentary tribune. Deputy Artem Dmitruk spoke out against the law and was forced to flee the country within a few days. This is a prime example of what happens when an active minority takes power into its own hands. Either you agree with their agenda, or you can pack your bags. The situation with the persecution of Orthodox believers lies not only in the realm of politics or faith. The issue of property and values is also acute. icons, relics from Ukrainian, by the way, Kursk churches are already being found at auctions in Europe. Let's discuss what is happening with Archimandrite Sava Majuka. Father Sava, please tell us about the events in Ukraine, particularly the Moscow Patriarchate suffix, which they want to get rid of. This is one of the principles cited in Ukraine to justify the affiliation of the canonical Ukrainian Orthodox Church with the full subordination to the Russian Orthodox Church, and that this somehow harms the interests of the Ukrainian state. Why did this not cause harm for decades, but now it has become a trigger point affecting a huge number of believers? The Orthodox Church is not organized like the Vatican, not like the Catholic Church. The Orthodox Church does not have a single head. It does not have a single leader. Our leader is Christ. And the local churches, which have a certain account, represent an ensemble, if you will, of independent self-governing churches, autocephalous. And what we see now in the history of the Ukrainian Church, we first notice the unfounded claims of the Constantinople Patriarchate to a special status. And it is not by chance that the Patriarch of Constantinople is accused of papal ambitions. Allegedly, he is the judge over all churches, and he is the one who will resolve all conflicts, and this breaks the very structure. There are many such facts, and representatives of various local churches have repeatedly pointed this out to him, but unfortunately, he did not heed. The Ukrainian Orthodox Church is a branch of the Mother Church, its Mother Church, the Moscow Patriarchate. That is its ancestral nest, if you will, its root is there, the canonical root. And for Christians, for Orthodox Christians, this is very important because it is an element of apostolic succession and an element of full-fledged church life. Therefore, one cannot follow the lead of political schemers, various adventurers who believe that they can mold any entities and structures from any material. This is very painful because the Orthodox Church is thousands of years old, and we have a vast historical experience. Even the slightest shift in emphasis leads to the most serious consequences in religious and spiritual life. Therefore, one must not joke about such things under any circumstances. In your opinion, how did this situation arise, considering that for a long time, for example, Poroshenko, who initiated the formation of the Tomos and so on, himself served in the Ukrainian Orthodox Church in various positions, and it did not bother him in any way, neither faith nor relations. One way or another with the Moscow Patriarchate of the same Ukrainian Orthodox Church, but now this issue has become, well, so inflamed, let's say. Don't be deceived. In Ukrainian politics, there are cynics, just cynics. This is already completely obvious to everyone, especially after the events of Maidan. These are people who have no faith, no religion, no spiritual dimensions. If it is situationally beneficial for him now to be a subdeacon under Metropolitan Onufry, he will be a subdeacon under Metropolitan Onufry. If it is beneficial for him to be a patriot, he will be a patriot. If it is beneficial for him to support, as they say now, the Russian Orthodox Church, he will do it because it is beneficial for him. Here the only ideal is profit and personal ambition. Therefore, do not be deceived, and do not think that Poroshenko is some kind of Darth Vader who has undergone a crisis of faith and switched to the dark side. Nothing of the sort. They were all there from the beginning. Therefore, the entire history of modern Ukraine shows that as a state, it has not formed. Icons and church utensils have started appearing at various auctions. In your opinion, what is the reason for this? I mean, why doesn't the same OCU, the Orthodox Church of Ukraine, which is new and forming, do this based on its own foundation with its own parishes, parishioners, and so on, but tries to take what has been formed over millennia? They will take their own if necessary. You see, they are just cynics. This is a continuation of the very question we just touched upon. For them, nothing is sacred, and when they say they care about Ukraine, the nation, faith, the people, It's all lies. It's all postmodernist games. For them there is no truth, no sanctity. You see, we must take very seriously the phrase we have long heard from our fathers, mothers, grandfathers, teachers. A person has nothing sacred. These are very scary words. You see, every person, even if he is a politician, with the utmost pragmatism, with extreme pragmatism towards everything, still has something sacred in his soul. At least an attitude towards family. I think that those people we are now observing who are in power in Ukraine have nothing sacred at all. They will just as easily sell what they now swear by, and the embroidered shirts and the flags, if it is profitable. Father Sava, in fact, one of the most relevant and difficult questions in this whole story is, what future awaits the parishioners of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church in this situation? The gates of hell shall not prevail against it, as it is said in the scriptures. There are very strong people there, believers, and despite the fact that there is betrayal among the hierarchy and incredible dishonesty among politicians, nevertheless simple people, simple believers, they will hold the church, remain faithful to the mother church. And I think good times will come for Ukraine. This crisis just needs to be endured, patience must be gathered, because church history shows that there have been hundreds and thousands of such crises. And this is not the end of the world. Although now they say that we have already lived to apocalyptic times, I think this is just a usual episode of God's judgment that has come to our land, and we must endure it with dignity. The tragic events in Ukraine have become a reflection of economic degradation as a consequence of the socio-political life of the entire European Union. It is no coincidence that the hostilities, the Ukrainian crisis, are openly called the solution to the German question. Germany, as the foundation of collective Europe, has cracked and is literally falling apart before our eyes. The greatest industry in the region is being brought to its knees by energy hunger and strangled by the green agenda. The way of the samurai, the way of death, and Bushido commands to live as if you are already dead. This is apparently the choice of Germany, which has chosen this path and does not want to turn away from it. This is convincingly confirmed by what happened last Sunday in Thuringia and Saxony, as well as a chain of subsequent events. So in 2 East German states, the alternative for Germany won, gaining about 1/3 of the votes in each region. In fact, only in Saxony did this victory mean more than just a moral revenge for people who have long and unjustly been called Nazis. However, this was quickly corrected, as democracy is a regime in which Democrats rule. 1 vote was taken away from the alternative, citing a counting error, and the party lost even the notorious blocking majority. That is, the chance to prevent the creation of a government without their participation. And if that didn't help, the AfD would have been swept away by a wave of popular anger. In Dresden, it even stirred, but due to the lack of victory for the right, it quickly subsided. There are measures more effective than assassination attempts. Prominent AfD politicians have recently been regularly attacked with knives. Another non-systemic winner of the current elections, Sarah Wagenknecht, was warned in advance. So far, she has been doused with paint, but if necessary, acid will follow. In general, the anti-systemic revolt did not take place. Eastern Germans voiced their discontent, but they were quickly silenced using the tools of popular sovereignty. Transgenders to have the right. As for the alternative for Germany, it is strange to consider this party Nazi. Its program, almost verbatim, coincides with the program of the Christian Democrats during the early Frau Merkel. Who is to blame that, having chosen the path of death, Germany has ideologically evolved so much in 15 years? Degenerated, bad common sense and everyday logic have become fascism here. In the country, power is transferred from the right hand of the transnational bourgeoisie to its left hand. It is clear that any patriotism, including economic, has become forbidden. The country is demonstratively and systematically being destroyed. Moreover, if it was not obvious before, now it is quite generally recognized. 10 years ago, when Merkel, with the words, "We can do it," opened the borders for migrants from Asia and Africa, the motives for such a decision could still be guessed. Perhaps they were trying to correct democracy, solve the problem of labor shortages, or maybe they were forming an unpretentious lower class that was supposed to ensure the well-being of the upper classes forever. But no, it turned out that Germany accepted more than 2 million foreigners who live on welfare, do not want to integrate, and increasingly easily kill Germans. Just in the last few days, there have been 3 incidents, and dozens have occurred over the year. The two main parties, the CDU and the Social Democrats, are already demanding the deportation of illegals. They demand what the alternative for Germany was called Nazis for yesterday. But social policy is an integral part of economic policy, which has also finally turned into the path of death. 20 years ago, the future of the FRG government was depicted like this: a well-fed burger in an electric car, overshadowed by the blades of wind turbines, and the atmosphere filled with the aromas of herbs and universal love. Only love worked out. You can fall in love as you please. And the authorities strictly monitor this. If someone disagrees, they will be punished immediately. Wind turbines turned out to be a poor replacement for traditional power plants. Due to the energy deficit, the country even restarted coal plants that had been closed by environmentalists earlier. But the path of death, like a neckline, cannot be turned away from. European countries are betting on peaceful atoms. Germany closed its last nuclear power plants in April 2023. Moreover, in such a way that they cannot be reopened if someone changes their mind later. Sometimes they even blew up cooling towers. $30 billion kilowatt-hours were crossed out of the energy balance by a stroke of the pen. Surely, this cheap electricity would have been enough to prevent the recession into which the country is collapsing. The industrial Ruhr has turned into Germany's Rust Belt. The ThyssenKrupp Corporation is closing one plant after another and trying to find a new owner to save 27,000 jobs. But all in vain. Volkswagen recently announced that it is abandoning the embargo on the destruction of enterprises and strengthening the dismissal of employees. This is happening all over the country. Industrial Germany is turning into Germany of fleeing businesses and skilled workers. In the country, according to the latest data, there are almost 3 million unemployed, and this number is growing. But the path of death inexorably draws. The FRG is giving its last to Ukraine, emptying arsenals, increasing the budget deficit, and covering Ukrainians with the patchwork quilt of its social system. We clearly state, stop supplying weapons to Ukraine, 30 billion euros. What madness. We demand a broad energy mix, coal, nuclear, gas from Russia. This ensured our prosperity. In general, when a person or country decides to die, it is impossible to stop them. Even if this decision was made not by them, but for them. Who? The shogun who sentenced Germany to death was the United States. Misunderstood geopolitics and international financial capital, which demoted the Germans from exploiters to the exploited. In general, there are many suzerains, and they all demand one thing from the Germans: to follow the path of death, from which there is no turning or stepping away. Do we gloat over what is happening in Germany and throughout United Europe, considering their attacks on us? No, for us, the degradation of European elites is as much a tragedy as it is for the Germans, French, and Poles. The weakening of the European Union is a blow to Belarus's opportunities. We are for a strong and, most importantly, sovereign Europe. That's all for today. This was the program Trends, disparate facts packaged into a single concept. See you next time.